the purchasing of these tools and their prevalence has increased in the hands of ICE agents and CBP agents in an extreme amount in recent months. So these include spyware tools like phone hacking tools, social media monitoring and analysis technology, facial recognition apps, both cameras, location tracking, license plate readers, cell site simulators that trick cell phones into connecting so that the cell phone location and data can be collected, other biometric data collection, as well as the aggregation of data from all sorts of databases, from utility bills, health records. All of these tools are being deployed against immigrants, protesters, neighbors, everyday people. We're also, of course, seeing the Department of Defense use AI, including AI chatbots. Claude, for example, was just used to spit out coordinates and give priority levels for airstrikes, for missile strikes in Iran. And this is an extremely important moment to be talking about all this tech. Also, as the war against Iran escalates, because what we know is that these tools are often tested and perfected abroad in wars and then brought back to the US. Slide, please. An example of this, and also as a way for us to think about what's coming, I wanted to mention drones and the use of autonomous drones, specifically how they've been used in Gaza. They have the capability of automatically searching buildings, identifying people using facial recognition, and firing lethal munitions. And we know that, for example, an American company, Skydio, sent drones to Israel for use in Gaza over the last couple of years. And their drones were perfected and honed in the battlefield and are now being purchased at very fast rates by US police departments. Over 800 law enforcement departments in the US have purchased these drones, and it's an enormous increase from 2024. And again, as the war escalates, it's important for us to be thinking about the way AI is being used abroad, because history shows us that those tools are going to be showing up in US streets. Slide, please. And a good example of this is, folks are probably aware of Mobile Fortify, the facial recognition app. And just to, again, note that the Israeli military has been using a version of that app for years. Their version actually gives people a rating based on a whole bunch of data, and that rating, the level of security threat someone poses, is then used to make all sorts of decisions. As of now, Mobile Fortify doesn't necessarily give people ratings, but this is the type of tech that we can expect to see. This is the direction that we'll be headed in if we don't take action to rein in this tech. Slide, please. And want to be very clear that from Fight for the Future's perspective, the tools that we just talked about that were on the previous slides, ALPRs, facial recognition, all of this AI-driven surveillance is far too dangerous and too much of a threat to exist from our organizational perspective, and it should be banned outright. And we're really excited to see all of the action from members of Congress, there have been so many oversight letters and really encouraging actions around tools like Paragon, the spyware, like Flock. And so we definitely want to keep up that work. I also want to talk about an area that is getting less attention, but is very, very important, which is cloud computing services. We know that big tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google are providing the infrastructure that enables the surveillance that we're seeing and enables the specific tools. Just to go into the details, cloud computing, for folks who are less familiar, it involves data storage, but also the processing and analysis and integration of mass amounts of data. Also often includes like a broad range of AI tools, auto ML, AI decision making, object identification, this kind of thing. And the big tech companies will often say that these services are standard. They'll often say they're just standard commercial services. But what we know in reality is that these services provide the backbone of all of the harms we're seeing. This technology is not neutral. They're not just providing the tech, they're often customizing it and integrating it based on clients' needs. And so one of the big takeaways from my perspective from this presentation would be the importance of beginning to think about cloud computing as an area of oversight and further investigation. So just to hone in here, we know that Palantir, all of its tools rely heavily on AWS servers and Google servers. Same for Flock. And then DHS also relies on a range of these companies' services. There was reporting from The Guardian showing that ICE's use of Microsoft servers more than tripled in recent weeks during immigration raids. And Cisco also is another example of the companies providing key infrastructure. So Splunk Cloud is one of the services that ICE uses. Now we can go back to the previous slide. And to drive the message home a little bit more here, we can check out this quote in the text, not the box, but under that, from the head of Israel's National Cyber Directorate. And again, going back to the example of the war in Gaza, because it's the key example of AI use in warfare right now. Obviously, yeah, the biggest example. So this person from Israel's National Cyber Directorate mentioned that explicitly that things were happening in the battlefield as a result of cloud computing technology provided to Israel by Google and Amazon. And finally, we'll just leave us with this last piece here in the box is an excerpt from Francesca Albanese's report on the business aspect of Israel's occupation and the ways that profits are perpetuating violence against Palestinian company profits are perpetuating the violence. So she mentions that tech companies are providing dual use infrastructure to integrate mass data collection and surveillance. And the dual use framework, basically thinking about cloud services and other AI tools as dual use, as needing to be regulated as dual use, meaning they can be used both for civilian and military purposes, is an area and a frame that we encourage folks to explore. It could ultimately lead to regulations around exports of these technologies, which is important given that these technologies are, again, tested and perfected abroad and then brought back to US streets. So I'll just end by saying that as these CEOs and billionaires of tech companies kind of are calling the shots when it comes to this technology in this moment, we're going to see more and more of it flooding our streets. We're going to see more war and deadlier war as a result of weaponized AI and the increase of its use. And it's really on the grassroots and on Congress to take back the power and the control from these companies.
The big question is like, what can Congress do? What can we do? And I have sort of three buckets of things that I think that should be examined. And the first is there are two bills that cut off a piece of this problem. And I'm actually going to turn my first 2 minutes over to Kenny because the first bill I really want to highlight is the ICE Out of My Face Act. It was just introduced with Markey leading in the Senate and Representative Jayapal leading the House. And Kenny is from Jayapal's office and would like to talk to you about it.
Yeah, so the ICE Out of Our Faces Act would permanently ban ICE and CBP from using facial recognition technology and other biometric identification systems. And that definition of other biometric recognition systems includes anything that measures someone's gait, or eye movement or other immutable characteristics from a distance. And so this is meant to not only address the instances that we've seen in Minneapolis, including with mobile Fortify, but it also extends broader to biometric surveillance more generally. It also requires the deletion of all data collected in violation of the ban, and it allows both individuals and state attorney generals to seek civil penalties for violations. So yeah, if you are interested in co-sponsoring, please reach out to me, and the bill number is HR 7363.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so in terms of victories and hope, I do want to let everybody know that this is possible. We can do it, and we have been doing it. So over the last month and a half, yeah, I guess almost 2 months now, we've gotten victories over Flock in Santa Cruz, the city of Santa Cruz, in the city of Los Altos Hills, in the city of Mountain View, and all of Santa Clara County through their surveillance use policy. And then one thing that has been really powerful, especially in the Bay Area and Santa Cruz, has been how it impacts people that are fighting for immigrant rights. As an immigrant myself, it's a very, very personal issue. These are the cameras that could potentially be used to throw me or my family in a concentration camp. And, it's definitely not something that I want happening. So I'm trying my hardest to fight this surveillance state as much as I can. And and I know that the police love to use anecdotes, so I'm gonna throw one out there myself. Um, so in Chicago, there's a teacher named Marimar Martinez. So it's actually been it's a really big news story, and it's made federal like outlets. But basically, Marimar Martinez was shot 5 times by Border Patrol, and the discovery process has shown that they were tracking her using license plate readers. So this technology is actively being used to harm people that are joining the fight to protect their community from ICE.
So in this time when people are canceling their flock contracts and looking at other vendors, I think this is an option that gets proposed. It's like, what if we owned the infrastructure and we owned the data? And I think it's a really interesting, if nothing else, thought experiment for a city government to go through to understand how they have become effectively the product in these mass surveillance vendors' marketing models, right? Because to build up a secure system, you would need to have a hardware system that is secure. You would need to have a databasing system that is secure. You would need to have the data integration mechanisms that are secure, API keys that are secure, and all of those layers of security are being packaged in a really interesting way where vendors like Flock are handing very cheap, low price point hardware over to these cities and saying, we can do all that for you. Anytime that somebody says to you, we can do all that for you, immediately get suspicious. You are the product, right? And that is why all of the data from these cities is being captured by these private vendors because they're offering something that's really, really difficult to do. And they're doing it very cheaply. And they're aggregating this data. They're aggregating the data, 99.99% of which has no law enforcement interest whatsoever. This is how your community's data is becoming the product. And we need community members and we need local electeds and federal governments to be really, really cautious about what exactly it is that they're buying into when they purchase these off-the-shelf, low price point products.
Absolutely. And this is a great way to close off with the offer that we and our organizations can be resources to you all. So definitely be in touch if you need help reading some of that fine print or a little bit of hand-holding on some of the solutions and, definitely open to collaboration opportunities. Thank you all so much for tuning in.